Today's episode of Geography is Everything is brought to you by water! Let me ask, do you enjoy living? Well, water can definitely help you with that. Do you enjoy drinking? Well, there might be some other options out there, but they all come back to water. Do you have a cat that jumped up on the couch? It is not allowed to be up there. Well, water, in a properly formatted spray bottle, can teach her a lesson. Check it out today. I'm going to sell this for, 400 ruples a spray bottle. Get yours today. Water! What the hell is a barometer? I don't know what barrows are, and I don't want them measured. Alright, so anyway, today's video is going to be all about Weatheria, the island of weather. Next week on Geography is Everything, we'll be talking about Ice Creamia, the island of ice cream. So, actually, you know what? There is Ice Island in Sherbert Town in Totland. I could do a Geography is Everything about that. That's the magical part of One Piece, you know? So, this was, of course, the island that Nami got sent to for the time skip via Kuma, the place that studies the weather. So, Nami was there, and she studied under Haradis, who is this Merlin-looking dude. All of the residents on Weatheria are old Merlin wizard-looking guys. Kind of curious how they, you know, increase the population for the next generation to study the weather, but they're scientists. They might, you know, figure out a way to clone themselves, like Professor Farnsworth did in Futurama or something, you know? I don't know. Although, hey, after the time skip, after Nami spent 2 years there and influenced them a little bit, they did switch up their threads a little bit now. So now they're like rockin' stylish geezer wizards, so you know they might have a better shot now at finding true love. We'll see where that goes. All right. So of course this is the absolute perfect place for Nami to get sent. This is also one of the things that kind of queued people up. You know, when Kuma separated all of the crew at first, we were like this. We were like, oh no, the Straw Hat crew has been annihilated by the warlord Bartholomew Kuma. But then you stop to think, like, wait a second. Kuma could have sent them anywhere in the world. He could have sent them all into an active volcano if he wanted to. Instead, he sends Nami to an island that studies nothing but weather. Okay? He sends Frankie to an island that Vegapunk was from that was the future land, has all this marvelous technology. I mean, there was a few that didn't sync up. He sent Brook to just a land of absolute poverty. Not really sure how he was supposed to get stronger in that environment, but, you know, there were a few that synced up rather well with the crew from what Kuma was aware of. I guess Kuma didn't really know much about Brook, so he was like, yeah, you're a spooky skeleton, so I'll send you somewhere spooky. Weatheria is located in the White Sea, of course, making it a sky island, one of the very few sky islands we get to see in One Piece. I really hope they go back to one in the New World, especially since a New World Sky Island might be way more treacherous than even Skypiea. That's another thing to keep in mind. Skypiea was not just one island, it was the name of like an entire little kingdom that Eneru, you know, ruled over. Angel Island and Upper Yard were both part of Skypiea, as well as like the Heaven's Gate, okay? There are more than just one or two Sky Islands, and Eneru didn't rule over all of them. The way that a Sky Island is created is when the Sea Prism Stone mixes with seawater and evaporates. There's this chemical called pyrobrine, which when it gets into the upper atmosphere, I guess it condenses and makes island clouds. So there might not be sky islands all over the world. They might be only limited to the Grand Line because that's where you can get a lot of this Sea Prism Stone. Hell, they're in Wano right now, which is where a lot of the Sea Prism Stone is mined. So if there's ever a location where there would be a huge sky island over it, it would be Wano. If it just logically, that would make sense. But yeah, Upper Yard and Angel Island and everything, they were located in the White Sea, 10,000 meters up. Weatheria is only located 7,000 meters up in the White Sea, alright? And it's the only island in the White Sea that we're aware of. I think even the balloon terminal, that island that Kaido jumped off of where Rouge was recovering from his injuries, I think that was also stated to be 10,000 meters up in the White Sea. But aside from those islands, you know, the Skypiea Islands and Balloon Terminal and Weatheria, I don't really think we've been told about any other Sky Islands. There are more, we just don't really get to see them very often, they're never really addressed. So I do hope, at least maybe before we get to Raftel, we go to one final adventure in the sky. We don't have to go through every little detail we went through last time. Now you have Frankie with you. I'm sure Frankie, if he wanted to, could figure out some way to rig up the Sunny to just blast into the freaking stratosphere. You know, like, he could figure out something. He's good with tools. You don't have to do the same thing with, like, we need to figure out a way to get the knock-up stream and all the perfect flight gear. I mean, Frankie's like, don't worry, I got this. You give him a night, he'll adjust these giant turbines to the Sunny and like, let's go! So, Weatheria, it looks gorgeous, doesn't it? You know, when I was in school, one of my science teachers was talking to us one day about, like, the different levels of Earth's atmosphere, and he said this, and I always remember this because he just, like, was really good at crushing all of our imaginations, all right? He comes out and he's like, did any of you ever want to live in the clouds when you were little kids? You know, you look up at the clouds on a nice summer day, and you're hanging out, and you're just staring up, and it's like, man, they look so fluffy, and they're just kind of drifting past, so peaceful. I would love to live in like a cloud city, right? And my science teacher's like, well, it would actually be horrible because it's really cold up there. You wouldn't be able to breathe, and the winds would be so intense you'd be constantly getting whiplash. Not a great environment to live in. So, thank you, Mr. Tekking science teacher. You did a great job of just smashing it apart. But that's why we have Oda, right? So, Weatheria looks like this, all right? There's a cloud, an island cloud that's of course the base. However, there is a giant bubble that's kind of underneath it. At first, I figured that bubble was actually serving to, like, you know, support the entire structure of the island, but that doesn't seem to be the case. We'll get back to that giant bubble in a second. On the surface of the island, it looks like we have 3 different tiers with these large staircases bridging the gap between each one. There's a large town on the bottom one that's kind of used like a cloud as like a canopy, so there's like a roof to the town, and then there's another smaller town on top of it. Whenever we get to see the island from Nami's perspective, it seems to be big enough. It has large rolling fields, and of course there's like crops, there's areas where the weather balls have to be cultivated and everything. There's windmills and just like pinwheels and little balloons and like blankets everywhere, so it gives it a kind of like really rudimentary sort of like Da Vinci sort of science like vibe to it, you know, like combining magic a little bit with technology, all right, especially considering everybody on the island looks like freaking Merlin, essentially. So yeah, it makes sense, right? All of the residents on Weatheria seem to have a similar kind of way to talk as well. Many of them look rather creepy if we're being straight up, and they all tend to like stare at somebody like this because they're all really tall wizards. So when Nami comes there anyway, she's shorter than everybody, so they all have to kind of like bend their bodies at 90-degree angles to talk to them. Then you have Haradis, who is, I don't want to say like the mayor of the island. We don't really know Haradis' status. Considering this is basically an island for a bunch of scientists to just study the weather, they come there because they all have a mutual love for the weather. So they might actually coexist in a way where they don't need laws or they don't require like mayors or a police force. It's more of just like a scientific outpost, less of a town or a city or an actual government, you know what I mean? So they don't really have to usually deal with a crazy woman going around stealing all their crap, shoving them in a backpack, and running around and stealing one of their magical flying gizmos. Not ordinarily a thing they have to deal with, right? So Haradis, though, he does have some standing amongst the other scientists. He might just be one of the weather scientists that's really good at it, though. He might have like an invention he created or something he came up with that the other scientists just really revere him for. It doesn't mean that he has a higher status. But he's the one that first meets Nami and kind of invites her into his house and gives her a place to stay and everything like that, and the two eventually end up becoming friends. He is kind of annoying at first because Haradis' little character quirk, every character has to have a little quirky thing they do in One Piece. His thing is he will constantly repeat himself whenever introducing himself. So he'll be walking into a room and it'll be like, hey, 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 hey. Imagine that every time you walk into a room to introduce yourself to somebody. I mean, God, right? So, you know, Nami gets a little peeved off of him at first, and also, he's very easygoing, you know? He's helpful, but he's also not helpful. Like, for example, Nami's like, I need to get back to the Sabaody Archipelago, can you take me there, please? And Haradis is like, oh, don't worry, young lady, this island moves on the wind. I'll direct our course for the Sabaody Archipelago, no problem whatsoever. So he's nice, but then like a few days later, Nami's like, so hey, when are we gonna get there, you know? It's been a while, it's been a few days, you know, you haven't really said anything, so how long until we actually get back to Sabaody? And Haradis is just like, huh? Oh, I have no idea. It really just all depends on the wind. If we hit a typhoon, we'll get there pretty fast, but yesterday we only traveled like 600 feet or so it's probably gonna be a while. And then Nami freaks out, like, why wouldn't you tell me this sooner? But, they end up becoming friends, alright? He has all these magical little trinkets and doodads that he created. We have this thing right here, which is like a magical rope that you pull, and every knot that comes undone releases a subsequently stronger gust of wind. He makes little cotton candy treats that are made out of clouds, which I do. I'm not even a huge cotton candy fan, but I would totes try some of that right there. Now, in the manga, we don't get to see that much of Weatheria. In fact, we don't get to see very much of any of the islands that the Straw Hats get sent to. Each of those islands got their own respective 2-page cover story, or I guess, in that case, 2-panel cover story on the Straw Hat separation serial. So, you have, like, one panel with Nami and Haradis, and then the next panel is they're helping out a little island, getting rain, and then that's it. So that's all we really get from Nami's end in the manga. In the anime, I gotta thank it for that. It's giving us way more information about the island. We get to see more of each island the Straw Hats at least get sent to. So we get their cover pages expanded upon a little bit, and then later on the anime, I think right before Marineford started, we get some more filler episodes with just the Straw Hats hanging out on the island. Not really doing stuff that was found in the manga, but just there. Remember when Frankie became an English gentleman? Yeah, that didn't happen in the manga, but they had to do stuff to at least add a new flair to it, where the Straw Hats are getting sent to. They're having their own respective adventures. So I like that. That makes sense. So basically, the deal is, you aren't just like stuck on Weatheria. Like, the wizards aren't just up there living like kind of as sequestered as the Skypians and the Shandorians are. They can go down into the Blue Sea. And it seems like while they might not be as accustomed to Blue Sea culture, maybe because they've been living up in the sky for so long and they're so obsessed with the weather, they at least, can travel down and interact with them. They're not like completely alien to the concepts of the Blue Sea, kind of like how Eneru and everybody was, because they'd never been there before, right? So in the case with Weatherians, whenever they need to get some extra money for their research, or just experiment, or just learn a little bit more about weather patterns, they can actually go down into this large balloon terminal place, not balloon terminal the island, as in a terminal where you can get into flying machines that just happen to use balloons as a form of locomotion. So there you go. And then that's where that giant bubble comes into play, right? So if the giant bubble is like this, the bottom half of it is outside of the island, and the inner part of it is that terminal place where you get in these little like carts or like hot air balloons sort of deal. It's sort of like that, but not really. It has like a wheel, like a ship, where you can steer it and things like that. And then you lift up and you go through the bubble, and you go through the other part of the bubble, and then you just float on down to the Blue Sea. And so Haradis and Nami go down into this island that's completely just ruined by drought. It's like a massive desert kingdom, very much like Alabasta. However, Haradis says, "Oh, well, don't worry. It seems like your solution is quite simple. You just require a little bit of rain. Now, I am a weather scientist, so for the low price of only 100 million berries, I can provide rain for you." Now, of course, 100 million berries, that's a pretty steep price. So even though the people on the island, they, need rain to live, they're like, we don't have that money, I'm sorry. But it leads into a funny scene, because Haradis, kind of being, living up in the White Sea for so long, he doesn't really know much about, like, exchange rates or, like, what's fair and what isn't, okay? So he just threw out that number, 100 million, and they're like, that's way too much. How about just 100 berries then, which is, like, wicked dirt cheap? So I don't think it was ever explained which amount, like, if he did just take 100 berries. I would like to think Nami stepped in and be like, how about we just say 5 million berries? That fair? Okay, great. And then so Haradis jumps into his little ship, which is also functioning as his, like, weather machine, pushes a button, and it summons a bunch of rain clouds that are stored in bubbles. These are not the same kind of bubbles as on Sabaody, though. Those ones are excreted from the hustle muscle mangrove trees, right? They go through that resin, so whenever the trees breathe, it creates bubbles. These bubbles are different in that they're actually grown, like cultivated like plants, up on Weatheria. Probably something to do with the unique climate that exists up there as well. You literally just plant a row of just like soil, like a normal, like you're planting carrots or cucumbers or something, plant a seed, I guess, and then it just sprouts into an actual bubble, and you have to take extra care with how you harvest them and everything, but you can put various weather effects into said bubble to preserve them whenever you need them. So you can take storm clouds from when it's raining and preserve them in the weather bubble from when you need rain for later, which Haradis does right here to bring rain to this desert kingdom, which of course the people are are all very happy and rejoicing, and it's at this moment when Nami is really witnessing the good that Haradis and the other wizards up on Weatheria really do for the world. She finds it, you know, I think I'm going to stick around here for as long as I can to learn weather science from you guys, of course. Now, that was before the news about Marineford hit. That was before Nami found out what happened to Ace and what happened to Luffy and everybody there. So she decides, I need to bail. I need to get back to Sabaody as quickly as possible. And this is where we get a lot of anime filler, which really explains what happened here. In the manga, I think it was just shown she tried to run away and she got thrown in jail. But in the anime, it expands it a little bit more, where she runs and steals one of those flying machines, except she doesn't know how it works, so she ends up crashing it, and she also stole a bunch of weather balls and research notes in the process. So the wizards of Weatheria are not really too happy with her there, and they chuck her into the jail they have. It's like a public display, sort of like the prisoner gallery in Wano, right, in Raisetsu Town, where it's like this bubble dome where they just throw you in there and you can't get out, and there's like a big kanji for criminal or sinner up on top of it. So I guess that's their answer for it. It's just like, we don't really usually have to deal with lawbreakers very often, but whenever, in case we ever do deal with a lawbreaker, we just throw them into this bubble dome area where they can't get out, and we just, like, stare at them and judge them all day. Actually, these wizards, at least in the anime, were pretty freaking cold-blooded. They were examining Nami in this freaking bubble prison, and they were like, what should we do with her? Drowning, perhaps? Maybe fire. Like, what the hell? All she did was steal some notes. You guys, it really gives me the impression, like, this is like a peaceful society. Like, they've just never dealt with crime before. So when, like, a criminal gets caught, they're like, oh, crap, what do we do? You know, well, I don't know. Do we, like, just throw her off the edge of the island? Or do we just give her a slap on the wrist? I'm not really sure. Is this written in the books? Like, all we have in here is just weather notes. I'm like, I don't know. Like, you think these people are like, okay, how about we do this? How about we throw her up on the roof, the top of pinwheel of the island, and let the weather decide what we do with her? I don't know. But anyway, Haradis then shows up, and she talks to him, and then she starts crying, and then they let her out, and then she immediately grabs Haradis as a hostage and starts running off with him. Somehow Nami eventually figured out a way to smooth it over with the other wizards, and basically, considering how she is, you know, and she's a lot physically stronger than all the wizards, I can tell you that much, she basically probably just slammed Haradis back on the ground and is just like, I'm living here for the next 2 years, so you might as well get used to me, and everything seems to be smoothed out. By the time Nami returns to the Sabaody 2 years later, the wizards are really happy for her, and they're gonna be kind of sad that she's leaving. I mean, come on. If Nami went to go live with you for 2 years and then she finally had to leave, you know, wouldn't you be kind of sad? I'm sure. I mean, the island didn't have a lot of money, I'm guessing, but Nami probably would have taken as much as she could before she left, and the wizards were just cool with it. He's like, well, Nami, you'll need it more than we do. Hope you have a good luck in your adventures. So that's the situation there, right? But Weatheria, in terms of the way it was laid out, looks really cool, rather heavenly, given that it is a sky island, right? It's also stated that using that giant bubble, they can actually manipulate the weather directly through that. Like, they can summon rain clouds directly from Weatheria. So that's what I said. It's more of, like, less of a city and more of, like, a research station, you know? That's just, like, mobile, and it can move around. So when Weatheria went to go drop Nami off at the Sabaody Archipelago, it literally just hovered directly over the island, and then Nami just, you know, got dropped off that way. And then when they were trying to escape from the Marines, they utilized the weather technology to summon a rainstorm out of nowhere so the Marines couldn't chase after their crew, right? And they were a little frustrated because of all the bubbles everywhere. It makes it difficult, but they still managed to come through. And so there's like a control room and everything in there. So that's what I mean. Like, it is like science in the sense of, like, you know, you're making machines and stuff, but it is more magic in the sense of, like, you know, magical ropes that summon Gus. It's like, yeah, okay, Haradis, I have one of those too. It's called a fan. The science of weather! Behold! It's also the place where Nami got a reworked version of her Climate Act, the Sorcery Climate Act. I'm not going to go into that too much detail, though, because the Climate Act is not geography. It is merely a rod that Nami wields. Very tightly, in fact. She grips it so she can use it to its fullest extent. I'm gonna stop. I made a whole video about Nami's Rod, if you want to go check that out there. But, right, so, yeah, it seems like a nice place I'd like to visit, you know, just hanging out by the rolling hills and all the, like, windmills and pinwheels in the distance and just gentle balloons, and there's no real crime, and it just seems rather peaceful, and you get to hang out with a bunch of wizards all day. You know, like, that seems like a fun, like, maybe week vacation before you get tired of the constant, you know, like, hi, 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 hi. Yes! Yeah, no, I said hi. I'm like, oh, okay, whatever. So there you go. You have Weatheria there. I don't know why I did that. I'm gonna have to clean a bunch of cotton balls up behind my desk now. But yeah, they're like clouds, you know, so they float. Okay, so I'll be doing videos on the other islands the Straw Hats got sent to, like Karakuri Island, where Frankie got sent, or the Boeing Archipelago. That's a good one, where Usopp and Heraclesen had their trials for 2 years. Anyway, before I go, though, I wanted to bring up one last thing, and that's we got new t-shirts that are geography-based. Check out this design and this design by the lovely Tap over on Twitter. Same person that designed the Geography is Everything t-shirt that I'm wearing right now. So we got some new designs. I'll be calling them maybe I shouldn't call them the log pose design. I'll call them the Grand Compass design. So if you head over to Teespring, the link below, you can check out either the colored version or just the pure black version. But yeah, thanks to Tap for designing them. They look pretty cool. And thanks for watching, everybody. And remember, check out water. I am the only person on the planet that can provide both these shirts and this water. Yeah. It's also the place where Nami mastered her balls. I was going to fit that joke in there somewhere, but it never came up. But I felt like I can't end the video without throwing it out there, so there you go. Bye, everybody.